Well, hello and welcome again, my dear viewer. This is the servant of Goranitai, coming again from the ISKCON Montreal to read you my story. Um, so I'm not sure if many of you have seen the Karuna Virus or read the Karuna Virus, but I do. I will admit I like the story better than Identity Quest, and the reason why I'm on AO3 is simply because the version on AO3 is the one which I've actually edited better. So as I was reading the fanfiction.net version, which I've also posted, I realized how terrible the grammar and editing was. And as it turns out, this is because I wrote. So there was the first draft of Karuna Virus was on my old computer that was stolen. So the next computer I had was this old Atom Core Windows 7 computer. It worked okay, but Grammarly wouldn't work on it at all. So um, I would do the entire spell check on Microsoft Word, and then I would run it through. Okay, what's the name of it? On Language Tool, which is an add-on on Firefox, but it's not as great as Grammarly. Even if, I mean, it's, with Grammarly, you can post like 20 pages worth of text and it will go through all of it. It will have some glitches, especially if you're as bad as I am. But yeah, so I uh, missed a whole lot. So here's what I'm right. Love doesn't have to be for my dear friend Kosei. Because this is the sequel to another story he or she wrote. Sorry, Kosei, I don't know your gender. You're a friend, okay? A friend's a friend. The Karuna Virus, of course. Identity Quest 2.0, which is the sequel to Identity Quest on fanfiction.net. It is called Recovery in Progress, because this is what the story is all about for our dear Zero and Omega. Then there is one of the most odd crossover that happened to mix even better than Mega Man Harmony Network. They came from the star. It's a Rockman, Mega Man X, and Kirby crossover. I have a plan for it, and trust me, we're going to go the Kirby route for the final boss. The Lotus of Mercy and the Wily Doll. Once again, another crossover between Toho Project and Mega Man X. How to Mend to Broken Heart, not a crossover. Well, technically it is a crossover between Rockman X or Battle Network and Mega Man Zero. I Am Not Zero, which is something I've written on Tumblr, and I've put it there. It's one of my most, I would call it sort of boring vanilla story. Because, Zero's basically just a Hare Krishna devotee. He still kills Copy X, but this time it says, I did not meant to do that, I swear. So it's, Identity Quest, of course, which we're at chapter 18. I'm like so surprised how far I've gone with this one. Deus Ex Machina, which I cannot wait to start reading the story for you. It's okay. Karuna Virus on this website is my most popular, but on the other one, this is my second most popular, and then Goranga, which unfortunately has died. Well, Gauranga is not dead, he's God, but the story named by him, well, Krishna told me, not really. So, that's what I'm writing. And I also have another one underway, which, it's a bit different than my usual fare. So let's read the Karuna Virus, freshly edited work, fresh out of the Grammarly word processor, and I'm now at chapter Okay, which one for the edit? Because I'm also in front of my computer. Chapter. Well, I haven't written that much. Okay, it is a cooling respite after the fire, which I believe, yeah, it's chapter 9. This one had around over 400 mistakes in the text. Anyway, so we've read about how Zero did not feel himself. And I believe, okay, mm, give me a moment. I just want to check exactly where we were. I'll be right back. Okay, now I know exactly where I am. So now second part is starting. So please sit back and try to enjoy and to take something out of it. I will try to make it short for you. Or long. You know what? Let's just do the whole thing. Um, Zero? He heard the little Reploid from the door of his room, a closet really. Not that he could expect more from the Resistance. Zero opened his eyes and looked at Alouette. Yes, Alouette? He gently asked, wondering what the childlike Reploid was doing in the middle of the night, a time where all that had the opportunity would recharge. Short of Ciel, Alouette was one Reploid whom Zero trusted implicitly. She was young, innocent, and held no secret, unlike the de facto leader of the Resistance. And thus the warbot had absolutely no objection to having the little girl come to him at odd hours of the night, especially since she had latched onto him the moment he had walked in the Resistance base a week back. Oops, that's a comma that slipped. Why are you sitting on the floor? She asked, still hanging in the doorway. Still standing in the doorway, hanging in the doorway. Oh boy. I like it. It feels familiar. Well, he was not quite on the floor. He had found an old piece of carpeting during one mission. It served a good floor mat. He was sitting cross-legged on it, at an ease that he had not felt since he had found his saber again. And I can meditate better like this. Oh? Oh? Why? Alouette asked again, finally entering the room, sliding the door closed behind her. I can't sleep. This is something I've experienced often. Insomnia's terrible. So many things churned in the CPU, so many questions, and yet no answers. Only Ciel's guilty silence. Oh. Okay, I will remove this. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. Oh my god, I have so much work to do on it. One of the reasons for Zero's inability to recharge was the recent mission Ciel had sent him. He had he had to save some soldiers, civilian-grade Reploids no less, who ran afoul of a certain green-skied guardian who thought Zero was a sinner for leaving X, the despotic ruler of New Arcadia. So he had left X. Who was X to him? And why did Zero felt some guilt and longing? That was another story entirely. Oh, me neither. I can't sleep either, Alouette revealed as she began inspecting Zero's room like the curious child she was. Why would such a useless Reploid exist? A child! She can't use a gun, she can't fight, and she's all alone. And if she would be caught... Zero let a small shudder shake his frame. The entire rebellion were considered mavericks, and the Red Reploid knew X would not have let any of them online. He had seen the repurposing facilities, had crawled to its corpse-filled corridors. Those were not considered maverick. I can't even imagine what X would do to criminals. And yet, it felt wrong. From the core of his very being, Zero knew that this X could not condone such torturous methods. The image of the kind young Reploid appeared. He was cradling the small body of a human child. Another memory had the Azure robot comforting a Reploid whom his partner had to be killed, having turned maverick. Zero, I swear. One day, both humans and Reploid kind will live together in peace. Exposed with conviction as he gazed at the setting sun. Zero held the blue Reploid close as he leaned onto him for support, having slung a comforting arm around his shoulder. I just I just don't know if I'll be able to see it through. X, please don't speak like this. I'm sure you will see it. I will make sure your vision come true. He already knew how. X turned his green eyes toward his best and only friend, his only companion he could implicitly trust, a partner that would never turn against him. They had lost their shines over the numerous wars they had fought. Those pain-filled eyes, this precious soul now in constant pain, his beloved X slowly breaking from all the meaningless violence, the curse called the Maverick Virus, a plague Zero had spread to the world at large unknowingly. This was enough to steel Zero's resolve. Tonight, he would break X's heart. He would make sure the Maverick Virus never took any more lives. He would not come back to his Q-Ying side. I apologize to any Chinese viewers. I am terrible at your accent. By the way, beautiful language you have. Zero? Zero? He heard Alouette. She sounded so far away. His head, it felt too heavy. His HUD warned Zero that his core temperature had reached a dangerous level. The red Reploid grunted. His head did not only felt too heavy, but it was so painful. Ugh. Whoever thought programming pain in a warbot is a sadistic jerk. Zero thought as he felt the headache fade to but yet another background noise. I'm fine, Alouette. I just remember who I am a little. He vented out, cursing his creator for giving him such a glitch-ridden frame. At least I now know why Harpuya hated me so much. He opened his eyes, turning his head toward a smaller blonde. She stood nearby, holding her white kite plush tightly to her small chest. She was obviously worried. So, what do you want? He tried to muster a smile, but he was sure it was a grimace. How do I smile again? Alouette shifted from one foot to another, obviously shaken by what had happened. I'm fine. It's not a headache that will kill me, I promise. He joked, or tried to. So, what do you want? Well, I wanted a story, but Alouette shuffled her weight from one foot to the other, still concerned for the Red Hero's well-being. But, can I brush your hair instead? Do you have a brush? Zero asked. To be honest, he wouldn't say no to some grooming. He had been so busy with running errands for Ciel. He didn't have time to take care of his heatsink, proper recharge, defragmentation. I need a break. Not that he could get one. At least he was starting to remember some of his past. He knew X for way back and when from way back when and was willing to sacrifice everything for him, it seemed. What the hell happened? I don't think he took whatever I did the right way. Some guilt and longing appeared in his heart again, making everything even more complicated than it had to. I do. I'll go get it. Okay, this is Alouette answering back. That's my type of writing. Little Alouette's face brightened considerably, and up she went to get the brush, leaving Zero to himself for 3 minutes and 8 seconds. And this is where I should have put the other story. Wait, I'll be right back. Huh, she took a little longer today. The red legend observed as a young blonde sauntered in his room again, carrying with her a brush, a comb, and an elastic. Zero had had the feeling she not only wanted to brush his hair, but also braid it. I can only hope it will not mess with my heat sink, not with the warnings I received. The last thing he wanted was to suffer a crash due to vanity. Alouette went behind Zero, and the red warbot removed his helmet, feeling the extra heat dissipate from in the atmosphere. The young girl then began to brush the red warrior's long golden heat sink, also known as hair. As she worked in silence, Zero could not help but find this whole ritual comfortingly familiar. And yet, he felt something was missing. It was too quiet. His core temperature rose a bit, and the red hero could feel the start of a headache. But he could not help but try to figure it out, to dig up a memory he had no access to. Glitch be damned. And then, along with a dull pain behind his eyes, a song long forgotten, a prayer more ancient than he, emerged from the mire of his corrupted memory bank. A sweet melody that was easy to sing, and words that were not from this world. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Zero closed his eyes, ignoring the pain with practiced ease as his lips moved in a familiar pattern, and his voice modulated a well-known tune, to him at least. I know this. What is this song? Where have I heard it? He wondered as he tried his best to remember, only to meet with more pain and more warning messages about his CPU dangerously overheating. Now knowing his endeavor to be fruitless, the red Reploid settled to simply sing it under his breath. At least I know something more than simply killing. It gave him some comfort, some hope that it was more to him than simply destruction, that he was more than yet another war machine. Zero? The somewhat panicked voice of Alouette reached him. Zero, stop! The red legend reopened his eyes with difficulties, his vents burning with excess heat. Once again, he held his heavy head, clutching it with enough strength to cause some damage. Uh, uh, what happened? His voice system glitched, and he realized he was dangerously close to a hard crash. He could hardly turn his head to face the childlike Reploid, but just by the tone of her voice, Zero knew Alouette was scared. Um, um, you, you were singing this beautiful song when you started burning. Oh. Looking back to his error log, he could indeed see that Alouette's assessment was a very good diagnosis. Zero straightened himself and vented as a few times until his core temperature were more or less back to workable temperature. Zero, I'm fine. I'm fine. You can keep going. Old models tend to have some issues with heat. He knew he was not like the other Reploids. He was a much older model made for war, and not much else it seems. Normal recollection protocol beyond a month is too much for my CPU to handle. And Ciel hoped to win a war with this. Once again, Zero had to question this girl's claim about being a genetically engineered genius. The next thing he knew, a pair of small arms wrapped around his neck. The Reploid attached to them shook like a leaf against his back. Please don't die, she pleaded meekly. I won't, he gritted out, hoping against hope that he could keep this promise. Zero, may I speak to you? Ciel approached the warbot a few days after the incident, looking even more worried than usual as they met on the way to the meeting. Zero stopped and turned to face the de facto leader of the resistance and the only human that he knew of on the base. Once again, the Reploids are led by a human, a child no less. It's not that Zero didn't trust Ciel. He was just finding it odd that a group of Reploid rebels were following a human teenager. For all he knew, the whole conflict was all in Ciel's head, and he was making everything worse. Or she could be right, and X really was killing his own progeny and causing an energy shortage. Zero may not have any memories, or he had a few, but he knew one thing. From what little he remembered, this didn't sound like X, and yet, Zero, if I ever go Maverick. Zero painfully closed his eyes as he blocked the memory of X. He didn't know the context, but to hear him sound so scared of what he could become. No, better not think too much about it. I'd rather not have an episode in front of Ciel. Not only would it be embarrassing, but the last thing the Resistance needed was a savior with a nasty heat problem. They needed hope, not another resource drain. Yes, Ciel? He prompted the girl. She was staring at him with deep concern. Alouette told me. Oh, crud. At least they were mostly alone. Most of the other Reploids were minding their own businesses somewhere else on the base. I'm fine. I wouldn't call almost heat crushing twice in 20 minutes being fine, Zero. Ciel fussed. I know your specs. I know your heat management systems are light years beyond what we can produce. So for them to fail. Zero remained silent. He had no time for this. He had a meeting with the rescued soldiers at 15:30 hours, and he knew he was running a bit behind. If I have some army people who know how to say these hours, I'm so sorry I'm not in the army. And he was running okay, that I read. All right. If there's any more episode, I will visit Servo. He conceded. He meant to meet with the base doctor to check his systems anyway. A visit he dreaded, yet knew was necessary. Something... No, better not follow this foggy memory. He could already feel his data core heating up. What time is it? Zero asked, hoping the banal question would stave off the oncoming episode long enough for him to hide and wait for it to pass. The pain had still not abated from the last one. There was always the risk of it coming back. Do you have some glitch in your chronometer? Great. Ciel was even more worried. No, my chronometer was fine. No, his chronometer was fine. He knew it was 15 hour 15 0 15.15 Bhagavad Gita as it is 15 chapter 15 verse Sarvasya chaham hridisani visto matas mrityol janam apohanam cha. Despite himself, Zero recited. He remembered the verse. Despite himself, despite the warning, the sirens, and the error message, she remembered everything. Okay, so about this Bhagavad Gita as it is 15:15, it is the easiest one to memorize. I don't know the Sanskrit by heart. I used to, but Krishna doesn't make me remember much. So, once again, I'm a Hare Krishna, meaning I know a bit about God. And do you know that God is the one who controls remembrance, intelligence, remembrance, and forgetfulness? Oh, yeah. The verse 15:15 is basically Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, telling Arjuna, of all the Vedas I am to be known, I am the I am the compiler of the Vedas, the knower of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas. From me come intelligence, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So yeah, those senior moment when you have that, talk to God for a bit. He will make you remember things. And I've personally lived, um, have the experience of. So I'm a cook in the Hare Krishna temple. And many times things move in the kitchen. Oh, we have other cooks. Sometimes it's a cleaning guy. And sometimes we just misplace things. So obviously when you're cooking, you're looking for your spices. You don't find them. Or for, a small knife or, a small teaspoon. And I've experienced of asking either Krishna or Shrimati Radharani, who is basically it's the female form of God. God is not just a male. God is not just a woman. God is not just black. God is not just white. Krishna's both. He's a man and a woman at the same time in two different persons. And he's blackish as Krishna, golden as Radha. So there, everybody's happy with him. So I asked them, where is that thing? And then I will find it 95% of the time. Because sometimes they think, no, that what you're cooking doesn't need that. Or they just want to make me panic a bit. All right, so Zero, she remembered everything. Oh yeah, let's go, guys. In the repair area, the chaos had finally abated. All the surviving Reploids were stabilized and recovering, and those too broken to be fixed were either put in permanent stasis or wrapped in a tarp, their bodies too precious to dispose of. The only thing left to do was cleaning up the mess, a task Cerveau took with determination. Nothing was worse than a messy workplace, especially when it dealt with broken equipment, body parts, and whatever fluid happened to have spilled that day. Nevertheless, the base doctor doctored. Grammarly! And weapons specialist had finished neatening up the triage area and let's call it the surgery area, and was now busying himself with the more specialized pieces of equipment like the all-important computers, recovery pods, and other things the Reploids needed to be fixed up as soon as possible. It wasn't much. Most of the equipment was considered obsolete by most reputable Reploid repair shops. But what Cerveau had was enough to save the life of many good units. Good job, love. He affectionately spoke to the hulking computer used to treat glitches and other software malfunction. It doesn't matter, you did your best for him. His wounds were simply too great. But I know you made sure Moineau entered cyberspace peacefully. Yes, so he liked to speak to his equipment, especially after such a chaotic event. So sue him. As he moved on to sweep the place, he heard a commotion outside. He could hear 3 people running, 2 of them carrying a third, a fort that could not bear his own weight. Well, love, it seems we have another client on our hand, someone who will need your expertise, my dear. Cyril spoke to as he preemptively booted the computer. The old girl was still needed. I hope this one won't get deleted. We lost too many good men and women today. He heard the door open. Servo! Zeros! Ciel screamed as Cuckoo and Pound dragged in. Oh no, Servo whispered in pure horror. The Red Legend, their only hope, was hanging limply from the 2 base guards' shoulder, his fens loudly spinning as he approached terminal failure. He would not let this Reploid go, especially not Zero, their only hope. Put him on the table. Gently, he amended. He didn't know what was the condition of his patient, nor if what afflicted him was based on hardware or software. What happened to him? Any prior symptoms? Any glitches? We don't know. Pow admitted as he put the legendary Reploid on the auscultation table. We were just hanging around when Zero... He spoke this weird language. Next thing we knew, he's clutching his helmet. His vents are all flared open and he's on the ground gasping for air. Cuckoo explained as he removed Zero's helmet, dropping it to the ground. Ah! Ask him of boxer shorts! He's burning! Indeed, a simple reading of his glasses told that the Red Legend's core temperature was way beyond what would be considered optimal. It was a miracle he was still somewhat functioning. Alouette told me he was having some issues with overheating. He had 2 episodes in the span of 20 minutes 2 days ago, but those are the only ones I'm aware of. Ciel gave a bit more information. I was telling him he should be careful. Oh, what to do now? The poor girl began leaking from her eyes as she clutched her head. Anything else? Cerveau prodded as he brought the multi-auxiliary to the afflicted. It was already connected to the old girl, and the troubleshooting program was open and ready. He managed to locate Zero's port under his high-density silicarbon armor. Basically, it's its skin, and Zero's skin? It's silicone reinforced with microcarbon wire, and that's why Zero's skin is completely black. And okay, as I've read, silicone cannot be scratched, it can be cut, but it can't be burnt. Silicone is great for cooking because it doesn't melt, but at the same time you cannot remelt and recycle it that we know of. And carbon is light, and it's one of the strongest. Sorry, bit of a niche there. And carbon, it's lightweight and it's strong. So yes, Zero's body is not like the other Reploids. Other Reploids are anatomically correct nowadays. And they're made of flesh that is a bit more fragile than a human. But their inside are still all metal, and thus they cannot survive by eating human food. Actually, human food would cause internal damage. It's just like stuffing water down your cars. Well, actually, nowadays we have less and less gas car, but if you were to fill a gas tank with a pastry, it wouldn't work. It would actually make it worse. So this is my Reploid. I just feel very uncomfortable when I read a fan fiction in which X and Zero are eating X. Well, have we seen Rockman eat something? Okay, answer me in the comment below. But have we seen Roll, Rockman, Forte, or Blue eating something that was not synthetic? Because if we don't, then I doubt, well, maybe X could get away with it. But at the same time, for me, I'm sorry guys, I like my robots to be robots. Like, I like my Cybertronian to remain Cybertronian. Except if you explain to me that Nanas can do that. And once again, we've never seen X and Zero consume anything that's of organic matter. But we've seen them consume, oils and other things like that. And no, Zero is not anatomically correctly built. They are made for wars, and while they used to have this update, because obviously it's an X and Zero story, when the war started again and the violence became worse, they decided to just remove it because they didn't have the time for it, and 2, it was a liability. So they just removed all liability. They just returned to being built for war. And Zero never got the chance, nor even the desire, to be honest. Well, they had the desire before, but you know, after so many wars, they just wanted to sleep for a while. And as for X, well, his life partner was gone, and he didn't want to date anybody else. So he also didn't get it back. Yeah, so that's a bit more insight. Okay, so the port. Just like a computer, a Reploid has more port. It's not quite USB, it's actually bigger than USB. They can also have USB port, but once again, X and Zero thought that they didn't want to have anything extraneous nor something that could be hacked. Reploid ports are actually protected by around 5 different types of firewalls, and while they can be breached, it's only the maker that knows where the back door is, and if it's not connected to a medical computer or a specialized computer, those ports will only be charging. There'll be no data transfer. So where are they? Umbilical, audio, back, and cranial, the whole gamut. And began the assessment, hoping his old medical computer would not crash, freeze, blue screen, or all the above as he tried to save his patient. Well, I think he may have a problem with his internal clock and with his memory. Alouette told me his systems would overclock when he remembered something of his past. And with Zero being an amnesiac, Servo let the sentence hang as he monitored the diagnosis progress. Alouette also reported he was singing something. Zero's eyebrows raised to his airline. Zero? Singing? I know. It doesn't fit him. Zero's so serious. He would never do something if he saw it as superfluous. And singing. I never even heard a Reploid sing willingly, and I mean it's Zero, an android built for war, not for entertainment. Ciel explained as she stood by the prone battle android's side, wringing her hands as tears fell from her eyes. Oh, maybe I've been overworking him. The computer beeped, having found what caused the malfunction. There were 2 conflicting programs running at the same time, and his temperature kept rising as a result. All right, shouldn't be too hard to resolve. You two, get him off that table and in the tank. The tank was designed to cool off any overheating Reploid as fast as possible without causing anything to break. The nanite-rich water was super chilled at a temperature somewhat above freezing, and yes, those nanite would actually kind of coat the Reploids inside, and if something would break, bend, or snap due to the change of temperature, they would just simply repair it quickly. And also for Reploids like Zero, the metal used for his soldiers, for his motherboard, and whatever else is actually flexible enough to change with the body temperature without cracking. Meaning because Zero can use elemental attack, and he and X went to a different type of environment. And when you're fighting Mechalinoid with different types of with energy weapon, energy means heat. This is fire. So if you're not built for that and you're shot, a single buster shot, raise the body temperature of a Reploid hard enough that things can indeed melt and crack if he's in a too cold environment. Which is why, for those Reploids who are meant to be fighting, it's used a specialized alloy for the soldiers, the lines, and anything that can crack or bend due to that. And this is also why civilian Reploids are cheaper to make and easier to recycle, but they are more fragile because there's more plastic, and the soldier is a lower quality, so it will melt as a lower temperature. Yes, I do love my robots and my sci-fi. Let me geek out on you guys. Yes, it was a shock treatment. But if a Reploid was at this point, what were a few cracked soldier joints and wrapped and warped skeletal frame for a chance of existence? Better yet would be mineral oil, not really, but well, it was something several wished he had right now, but only had enough for minor work. The red and black android was soon stripped of all gears and submerged into the near freezing water, causing the liquid in direct contact with him to sizzle. His rising temp somewhat slowing the steady hike toward a spectacular heat death. The computer beeped. Its attempt at resolving the error had been met with multiple failure, either due to age or simply because the patient was not built the same as the rest of the Reploid population. The red conflict needs to be manually resolved then. Servo opened Zero's terminal to see what processes were at war with one another. What met him was the work of a mad genius, something beyond what a mere human could do. So many codes that should not work together, a coupled up mess that somehow managed to form the legendary Red Warrior, the Reploid that had fought in the Maverick War alongside X, saving the Azure Warrior many times over. What in the world? Sia breathed out. The young genius knew how to code. She knew what was scrolling on the screen. How does Zero even manage to wake up in the morning? Is that. Oh my god, is that a Berserker program on Startup? Who the hell thought that was a good idea? Ask his creator, he should know. Silvo grumbled as he connected his glasses to the screen, strolling through the mire of codes to see which one caused the fatal conflict. 5 minutes later, he realized that Zero's code, as nightmarish as they were, all seemed to work in harmony. Okay, so 5 minutes later, he realized that Zero's codes, as nightmarish as they were, all seemed to work in harmony. It's not from his main processor, not in his source code. I think I found it, Ciel exclaimed. Oh gosh, that's what those are. Ciel? The base tech master and engineer glanced at what Ciel was looking. The leader of the Resistance has managed to find Zero spec and blueprints, quickly pinpointing what she was referring to, his dual data core. No one in their right mind would ever put a dual data core in a warbot, especially on a Reploid's chest and in such close proximity. Those specialized data crystals had the terrible habit of heating more than necessary when installed so close to one another, and they looked very awkwardly on a male-coded frame. This explains why he has such a high performance heat sinks, Servo muttered to himself. Now, what do they contain, and why are they burning him from the inside out? Other than their placement, that is. Some moment later, and he had his answer. By Cossack's daughter, two cognitive suppression program and a memory scrambler have been active and in conflict since Zero was resurrected. That does it. Zero's maker was either drunk during his coding or a pure sadistic genius. Silver muttered as he ordered the old girl to terminate those two unnecessary programs. The screen stuttered. The supercomputer's fan went into overdrive, and the resistance doctor could just feel his old girl's processor chugging to the external shutdown process. Please work. Please work. Please don't crash. He heard Ciel whispered with folded palms. Even in the cooling tank, Zero's internal temperature was dangerously close to the one fatal error. Zero feared his next diagnosis. No Reploids he knew ever came out the same after such a close encounter with a heat death. This is Zero we're talking about. Legend says that he came back from unsurvivable odds quite often. Let's hope this time will not be different. Suddenly, the screen went black. Oh no, please don't do this to me, love. Servo all but dived behind the old girl, hitting the manual reboot as he prayed to whatever had an ear to listen to an artificial being for a miracle. Not that he believed such silly concept. Everyone knew God was a myth, and that existence was made so that everything ended in destruction. It was a game of survival, a game no one could win. And Zero was at the end of his session, like they all were. He heard Ciel's cry in despair. Servo knew the next hour would be hell. The old girl started again. It would take a minute. A minute Zero didn't have. He crawled from behind his girl, dusting his clothing off from whatever dust had gathered. Ciel, I'm sorry. I did all I could. He wished he could have done more. There must have been more to be done. Maybe if he had been faster. Maybe if he could try removing those two core. But he had no idea if they were holding other vital processes. And to get Zero out of the immersion tank meant that Servo would not even have the time to open the legendary Reploid skin, that he would be burning off essential processors and chips. Um, yeah, so while Zero can withstand some heat, um, once again, computers can survive in some pretty drastic environment, but it can also heat a lot. I've had this one small Samsung microcomputer. I mean, the thing had this ridiculously small fan. It was literally just a tiny piece of round of plastic of plastic just turning around saying, "Oh, I'm a fan," and that's it. And I've had this thing come very close to 90 degree. Um, and that was just on YouTube. Just watching a video on YouTube and nothing else. So, I've had the same thing happen to one of my old tablets. And that was, okay, this was pretty funny. So, I was actually listening to, I think it was something with Undertale. And so, I was listening to Dead by Glamour. And in this particular one, there is Metaton, the ooh yeah of Metaton. And the moment he said that, my tablet overheated and crashed. Yeah, that's our Metaton, all right. Um, so yes, for Reploids, um, let's just see that Zero's heat when he's into the state, um, it's like he's taking damage every 5 seconds, like a little bit of damage. It's like a death of 1,000 cut, like it. Because his body is in shutdown, his nanites cannot repair him. Or they can repair, but wait. Sorry about that, a bit of an interruption. So, the nanites can repair, but he's taking damage faster than they can repair it. And it only goes worse. So that's why it doesn't work. The booting sequence started, and after a minute, the medical clunker was booting up its diagnosis process, and Zero feared what he would find now. And then he could not believe it. DNW Infinity 00000. Status operational at 64%. Main data core Z-Brain. Status stable. W last laugh operational. Left data core Z-Heart. Warning core unbounded. Suppression program terminated. Inhibition program terminated. Warning memory partitioned removed. Right data core external memory drive. Status overloaded. Warning corrupted data unable to access. Start restoration? Yes, no. Zero could only stare. Zero should not be at 64% capacity. 64% meant unconscious but recovering. And indeed, the numbers kept slowly climbing toward functionality. Better yet, many of Zero's memory files were now accessible, including his defragmenting memories. The base engineer let out a small laugh. His legs felt weak, his hands were shaking. Their only hope, Zero was. He was recovering. And maybe he would make it out fine. No, no, this can't be this easy. This is real life, not fantasy. Ciel, don't get your hopes up quite yet. We don't know how this will affect Zero. He warned the young girl, and by extension himself. The right core was overloaded, and he had no idea what type of data was in. I know, it's a miracle. Zero's, he survived. The young genius began sobbing, and Zero could not help but shake his head. Ciel, there is no such thing as a miracle. We may have underestimated Zero's resiliency. That's all. I'm sure his creator was smart enough to include a few automatic recovery protocols and whatnot. Zero put a hand on his shoulder. He had no idea what would come out of the tank anymore. It may not even be Zero. Only time could tell. And there you have it. Chapter 1 of the Karuna Virus. Now, what will happen once they realize that Zero is a woman and a Hare Krishna? Stay with me to know. Stay with Hare Krishna, chant and be happy.